Hello! So if you've been here for a while, you probably know that I am a big fan of beautifully made handmade plush toys. They are one of my absolute favorite things to make and also one of my favorite things to buy. They take a whole lot of time and effort, so I haven't made too many of them recently, but I did make one this week and I wanted to show you how it turned out. So this is a tiny little felt doll. It's a little rat, and he comes from a new book that's coming out. My friend Cynthia Treen is an amazing doll artist, felt doll artist. So she has a new book coming out. It's called The Wind and the Willows Felt Friends, and this book is gorgeous. She sent this to me. She sent me all of the materials, including like the tiniest little buttons that you've ever seen in your entire life. So here is how I made this adorable felt rat doll designed by Cynthia Treen. Before I get started, I did ask Cynthia what age she recommends these projects for, and she said pretty firmly that they're for adults. There are a lot of really tiny details, a lot of really tiny pieces, and sharp pieces as well. And so you can be an adult beginner, but these are too challenging for most kids. So this is the book that I was working off of, and this video is not meant to replace the book for you, so if you do want to make one of these, definitely get the book yourself. The instructions are going to be much more detailed, and you can actually get the pattern pieces, which are really important. But this is what the instructions look like for this particular doll. There are a bunch more in here, along with a lot of really cute accessories. So I started out by cutting out the patterns and putting the pieces on the felt and cutting out the amount of felt that we needed. And there was a really good tip in here that I think I'm going to use more often, which is to put little bits of washi tape on the back of the pattern so that they stick on the felt. And then that way you don't have to poke holes with the pins, which is normally what I would do. And it doesn't move around as much as it does if you don't use anything at all to attach it. So these dolls in the book are posable, and the way that they are made posable is using pipe cleaners. And so this part of the instructions confused me just a little bit, just because it was so different from what I would normally do. So I just want to show you how I did this. There is a chipboard template that you cut out, and then you use that to wrap 2 pipe cleaners around. And there are lines marked in the center that show you where to trim. And then that template gives you the perfect shape that you need in order to make the arms and legs posable. This is just for the arms, and you clip them together like this, and then you kind of bind the places in the center, both to keep them from coming apart and to keep the pointy ends of the pipe cleaners from stabbing you. They are pretty sharp. And then you just tie a knot at the end once you have wrapped your thread around a bunch of times. And then I got to move on to my favorite step, which is actually sewing these pieces together. So I started off with the arm/leg piece, the first one, and this is either 2 arms or 2 legs. They're connected in the middle, and they have a pipe cleaner on the inside in order to make it posable. It's pretty bendy. And then I moved on to making the second arm or leg piece, and that was easier since I had already done it once. It was a little bit tricky to get that pipe cleaner thing to fit on the inside, but it did work out. And then once that was all together, I could put together kind of the main body shape, and it uses more pipe cleaners as sort of an armature wire. And there were some really good illustrations. The book uses a combination of illustrations and photographs and obviously words to communicate to you what to do for each step, and I didn't have any problems here. And once the armature was sort of assembled and pinned together, I was able to go through and sew up all the different edges in the order that the book specified, and then also start to stuff the body shape. For the stuffing section, I actually got to use this stuffing fork that Cynthia herself made and also labeled for me. That little note made me smile so much. But she said that she makes and sells these and that they tend to sell out really fast. And I had never tried something like this before. I usually use my fingers or like jam some sort of chopstick situation in there to try and get the stuffing where I want it. But this little tool makes it so that it actually kind of grabs on to the stuffing and you can direct it exactly where you want it to go. And it worked out pretty well. I also am not usually used to making pieces this tiny, so I'm glad that I had an extra tool in order to make it a little bit easier. The pattern pieces mark where the eyes are, so the next step was to actually use some thread and some knots to mark where on the pattern piece the eyes are going to go later, which I found to be very helpful and it wasn't something that I would have thought to do on my own. And then I needed to sew the little darts on the head and then sew the two head pieces together. And then I stuffed that. And it's starting to come together. It's starting to look like a doll, which is very exciting. And then the head gets put on the rest of the doll and sewn into place. And there is a lot of information in the book, aside from just the instructions for how to make the dolls. It has a lot of kind of sewing fundamentals and tricks and tips. And I think I would recommend that if you get this book, get some Post-its and kind of mark the pages that are things you might be flipping back and forth to, because there are lots of different sections of the book that I was using the whole time that I was working on this. And now it's time for a lot of little detail work. I used my teeny tiny craft iron to kind of iron down the seams and the fuzzy parts of the felt. And then I used an awl to poke holes where the eyes are eventually going to end up. And then this part was new to me. I actually used some hairspray and a paintbrush to stiffen the felt on the face to make it easier to paint it, which I was a little bit nervous about after I did all of that work making the doll, but it ended up turning out really cool, so I'm glad that I trusted the instructions and just tried it out. And the next day, when that was fully dry, this was like a 3-day project, a really solid 3-day project. I used these paint pens to paint the fur detailing and the lighter spots on them in the nose and the eyes. And there were some really good photos in the book showing exactly how to do this. I was nervous about it because I don't normally paint the dolls that I make. And I'm glad that I did it because I think that it adds something. It really does. There are photos in the book that will show you what it looks like without the painting. So if you don't want to do that, it's still super cute. But part of why I wanted to do this project was to try new things and get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And that's what I love about doing projects like this that amazing folks design, is that I learn from them when I make something that's in their style instead of mine. Then I used a long doll making needle to attach 2 eyes, and this part I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to turn out. I was a little bit nervous about maybe having the thread or a knot visible somewhere on the doll, but the way that Cynthia explained it in the book made a lot of sense and worked out perfectly. I feel like they're really tight in there. I was able to give it a really good tug to kind of have them pull inwards, and it affected the shape of the whole face. I was just really happy with the way that this step turned out. Then I used an assortment of markers and other felt tip pens that I have around to draw on eyeliner around the little guy's eyes, and then also draw on a nose and a mouth. And then I used the fast dry tacky glue to glue on the ears along with these little tiny pins. And all of those things, normally I would try to embroider them on or sew them on, and I almost did. But then Cynthia stopped me. She said that when you add hairspray onto a doll like this, it becomes kind of brittle and you can pull stitches right through. So once I did that, I was kind of committing to the painting and gluing method, at least on the face. So if you try this and you want to test out different things, feel free, but that's what she told me as someone who had tested multiple versions of this. Then I made a tail, which involved giving a pipe cleaner a haircut and sewing it inside of a very, very skinny little tube. But one very cool thing that happens once you sew the tail onto the body is that the rat stands up. You can use the tail to prop it up, and that was very satisfying. The next step is to make the clothes for the doll, and before I get started with that, I just have to show you this teeny tiny capsule full of the cutest little bits and bobs that Cynthia gave me. I had to dig through them to try and find the buttons, which may be the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But like, look at this. There are like little belt buckles. There's all sorts of stuff in here that I'm gonna have to dig through and use in other projects from this book. And then the next step is to make Ratty's pea coat, and I did all sorts of little detail work on this one. I did stitches all around the edges, which I thought added so much. It made it look so much more finished. I also added on these teeny tiny little buttons that I'm obsessed with that I've already mentioned to you several times. Those are really, really cute, and they were pretty easy to put on as well. And then I also added on these heart-shaped elbow patches, and it took me a minute to figure out the placement. I had to redo them a couple times, but it all turned out okay. Those were not originally part of the pattern, but there was a suggestion that elbow patches could be added, and I just had to try it. Oh, I almost forgot. Off camera, I used some hairspray to make his ears kind of curly, just the way that the instructions detailed, and I was nervous about this also, and it turned out so cute. And then actually constructing the jacket was a little bit complicated, but the instructions were clear and I was able to do it. Just took some time and effort. There are these little tiny wraparound cuffs, and it snaps shut so it stays on, and I think it turned out so cool. This is probably one of the coolest things I've ever made. I love it so much. He also has a very simple little red scarf that was very easy to make, and I thought it added a lot for sure. So cute. And then the last thing I needed to make was the little gold pants with the tiny cuffs at the bottom, and they were pretty easy to make overall, less complicated than the coat was. But they also have these little snaps which make it very easy to get your little rat dressed. And I really am completely smitten with this guy. This is probably the most involved plush doll I've ever made before, and I am so glad that I got to try all these new things, and just look how cute he is. He is adorable. This book is coming out September 13th. If you would like detailed instructions as well as the patterns to make this doll and the other things that are in this book, you can buy the book. I will leave information in the video description below, and it also was really, really fun to make. It was really cool getting to make something more detailed and time-consuming than my usual plush art, and so I also am going to treasure this forever. This little guy is probably going to go up on my shelf next to the Cynthia Treen fox that I made quite a few years ago. But the publisher actually sent me 2 of these books, and I don't need 2. So if you would like to win my extra copy, let me know in the comments below what is a plush that you would make. If you could dream up any plush or any doll in the whole world, what would it be? Tell me all about it. And if you live outside of the US, I'm sorry, it's open to the US only. I do not have the budget to send this out of the country. Would it be your favorite animal? Would it be a character that you love? What is the ultimate plush for you that you would either love to make or buy if it existed? In about a week or so, I will choose my favorite comment and get in touch with you for mailing instructions. If you would like to check out Cynthia Treen's channel, I'll put a card up here. Definitely check her out. She's got some really great tutorial videos on her particular style of doll making, and she also sells kits on her Etsy shop, which is really great. I've known her for a while now, but we finally made plans to actually get together and hang out. We had coffee and it was really lovely. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for sending me the supplies to make this. And for full transparency, I was not paid outside of the books and the supplies. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. If you would like to see more regular videos from me, I post a lot more often on my journaling channel, Journal Sunshine. You can subscribe to that to see me more often. And I will see you soon.